Y'all, I'm Ashley Woodard Henderson. I'm really, really excited to be in a conversation with Gerald Griggs, who is an attorney, an activist, and the 13th president of the Georgia NAACP. President Griggs, thank you for taking the time to be here with us today.
Thank you for
Um,
having me. I'm excited about the conversation.
Absolutely. So, the Georgia NAACP has been around for 108 years, and it's been at the forefront of some of the biggest civil rights moments in our nation. Where do you see this current political moment is fitting within that long struggle for civil rights?
I think we're at one of those milestones in the fight for liberation, the fight for rights, the fight for inclusion. And so it's incumbent upon the Georgia NAACP and, of course, the NAACP broadly to be involved and to be on the ground in this struggle. So, as you said, for 108 years, the Georgia State Conference and her branches have been engaged in the fight. And, of course, for 116 years, the association has been at the forefront of all movement. And so from Ida B. Wells to W.E.B. Du Bois to Dr. King to now, we have to be engaged in that broader conversation about what rights look like, how we fight back, what our strategies and our mobilizations look like. And that's why it's incumbent upon us to be a part of the coalition that will push back on April the 5th.
Absolutely. We're seeing a lot of academic institutions and major corporations who just a few years ago, particularly in the time of the George Floyd uprisings, were putting up Black Lives Matter signs. And now they're rolling back their commitments to diversity, equity, and inclusion. Do you think caving to Trump pays off for these companies and colleges in the long run?
No, I don't think so. And it puts them on the wrong side of history, as we have seen with the stock market, particularly Target. We're seeing that diversity, equity, inclusion are business motivators, and they are profitable to the bottom line. And so I think that the universities and the businesses that want to curry favor with the administration are turning a blind eye to the moral arc of the universe bending towards justice, and this generation being a part of the bending. And so they'll be remembered on the wrong side of history, namely like the people that were yelling at Ruby Bridges when she was integrating elementary classrooms. It's incumbent upon us in this generation to speak as vociferously as our ancestors did and to make sure that we call out injustice wherever it rears its ugly head. Because as we know, for evil to prosper, all that needs to happen is for good men to do nothing, good men and women to do nothing. And so I think it's incumbent upon the association, especially the Georgia State Conference, to be a part of any movement that continues to protect rights and enhance rights.
Absolutely. Tell me why the NAACP, the Georgia NAACP, is joining this march that's happening in Atlanta this Saturday. Why do you think it's valuable for people to actually get out and show up?
Well, I think, a lot of people have been in the malaise of sitting back and watching what's happening and don't know how to voice their displeasure in a peaceful, nonviolent way. And of course, the Georgia NAACP has always championed civil rights disobedience that are peaceful and nonviolent. And so I think it's time for us to add our voice. There's a direct assault on minorities from the policies of this administration, whether that's the firing of CDC workers here in Atlanta, whether that's the attempt to dismantle the Department of Education, where in Georgia that would mean the loss of $2.26 billion for both post-secondary and our elementary through high school students. So we're talking about Title I schools, we're talking about Pell Grants, we're talking about all these things that will be affected by the dismantling of the Department of Education. And then we have to deal with what's happening in the Social Security Administration, whether that's people with disabilities or people who put in for their entire working career, not potentially getting those benefits. So there are a host of things that are affecting us on the ground in Georgia. And then, of course, we have the direct attack on diversity, equity, and inclusion, where one of our favorite sons was attempted to be erased, and that's Jackie Roosevelt Robinson. And so when you have these type of red flags going up, it's incumbent upon the Georgia State Conference, who has given birth to some of the greatest activists the world has ever known, to be a part of the new movement, the resistance movement against the backtracking of all of these civil rights wins that we've had. And so we need to be on the front line with all of our other partners.
President Griggs, your leadership is beyond reproach, and certainly your work speaks for itself. And I think the folks that are going to be watching this are curious, and I feel like it's a question that I get often is what's giving you hope in this time?
Well, I was mentored by some of the great legends of the movement, whether that's John Lewis or CT Vivian, about these type of days. And they said that, someday is going to come a challenge in your generation, similar to the challenge we faced in our generation. And then I was remembering the words of one of the greatest civil rights leaders in this city, Coretta Scott King, who said that liberation and freedom are fought and won every single generation. So this is the cause in our generation to push back. Now, my hope is that people of good conscience will come together and fight back. But we all know that it only takes about 30% of the population to push a movement. And so I'm calling on people of good conscience, 30%, to step up. I don't want to be that person who 30 or 40 years from now with my grandchildren, my great grandchildren are asking, what did you do in 2025 when there was an assault on healthcare? There was assault on women's rights. There was an attempt to erase Black history and to demonize something by calling it DEI instead of calling it diversity, equity, inclusion. I don't want to be that person to say, well, I was tired after the election, so I sat it out. No, that's not what our ancestors did, and that's not what this generation would do. So what gives me hope is to see the young people. I was just at Spelman College yesterday, see the young people already organizing, coming up with ideas on how to push back, reminding us that we don't just need to look at history, we need to make history. And so that's what gives me hope. And then I remember we've been down this road before. The biggest march in Georgia history was the Women's March, and that was in 2017 against this same administration. So we marched, we protested, we litigated, we've elected individuals after that first inauguration. We saw the rebirth of Georgia. You saw great names rise like Raphael Warnock and Stacey Abrams, and of course, John Ossoff, who two of those are now elected senators from this state, a slave state that elected a Black senator and a Jewish senator. So I see the wins, and I know that, we're facing a dark moment in our history, but we all know that it's darkest right before the dawn. So let's bring the dawn on. And that's what I know is going to start the march that we're going to have on Saturday.
President Griggs, we love you. Thank you so much for your time, for your leadership. We're grateful for you. And we hope to see you out in the streets in Atlanta and all across this country on April 5th. Folks can find more information at the Hands Off website. Please check it out. Please subscribe to the Substack, and we'll see you on April 5th.